Hi, my name is Riley Allen. This is my review of Season 2, Episode 15 of Gravity Falls, titled The Last Mablecorn. In this episode, Ford has dreams of Bill. We find out that he has connections to Bill, which, considering he was the author of the journal and Bill is heavily in journals, no duh. So he decides to Bill-proof the place. And one of the things to help Bill-proof the place, or demon-proof, whatever, is unicorn hair. And in the journal, it says only someone of pure of heart who goes on a grand journey or whatever can get it. So Mabel volunteers as tribute. And then she tells Wendy, Candy, and Grenda that they are going to come as well. Wendy's just there so they don't die. She don't believe it. So they get there, or they get to where they are gonna meet the unicorns. They gotta do some ancient druid chant in a deep voice, which is Grenda's, thing. Wendy doesn't believe that anything's gonna happen, so she makes a bet with Mabel. Mabel wins the bet. That scene kind of reminded me of the scene in the Avengers where Steve tells Fury, nothing's gonna faze me anymore. And Fury's like, you want to make a bet? And, that kind of reminded me of that scene. So they get there, and this unicorn, blah, 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 blah. I can't remember. It was a whole name, so I'm just, She tells Mabel that she's not actually pure of heart, because she can see in her true heart of hearts. So Mabel goes on like this quest to prove herself that she is true of heart. And she gets there after doing all these good deeds. And the unicorn does tell Mabel that an act of good since she was willing doing these acts so she could prove a point, I guess it wasn't really true acts of kindness and true acts of good, which even with later knowledge of what the unicorn was straight bullshitting, it is kind of true and kind of not true. She was still doing good acts, but she was doing it for ulterior motives, so but eventually we find out that the unicorn is lying. After Wendy, Candy, and Grenda go to this gnome pub. Side note, they go to this magical part of the forest, so there's a regular forest in Gravity Falls where, the Manitors reside and some gnomes. And then there's the magical Narnia part of Gravity Falls, where there's fairies, gnome pubs, unicorns. We never see this before. I think this is the part of the forest where Dipper gets those gems from that he used to shrink and grow him and Mabel in that episode. I think it was Little Dipper. So I think this is supposed to be the same part of the forest, but we never really get more of it after is Weirdmageddon. So they meet this gnome who's a pixie or fairy dust dealer. He makes a deal with Grenda that he wants butterflies, because butterflies are illegal. So Candy, Grenda, and Wendy get butterflies and make a deal with him. So he comes and, there's a whole little drug deal, Grenda, wearing a suit or a little tracksuit, jacket, sunglasses, and a hat. Because, of course, Grenda's the one doing the drug deal. She passes along the butterflies to him, but wait, she's wearing a wire. Out comes the gnome police. All's good, the gnome butterfly trafficker is going to jail. Oh, no, she hands one of the packets of fairy dust to the gnome cop. He's corrupt. Yep, that's about right. Because this is Gravity Falls. And the cops are either incompetent or corrupt, apparently. So they use the dust on the unicorn, get her paralyzed, and that's kind of when the big reveal happens. Yeah, no, we were just pulling your leg. We just say that so the humans will leave us alone, which is very fair. This particular unicorn is a jerk. But that is a very valid reason to, say that. Considering, if they didn't do that, like, they'd be bugged by all these humans, I mean, it's valid. So they all have this big fight, which they win. And they get the hair, some blood, some spit, some eyelashes, just in case. Now let's talk about what Dipper and Ford were doing. They were learning about Bill. Because, Dipper and Bill have some beef. They got some history, and so do Ford. Ford has this mind-reading machine, and that's how he, gets information from Dipper. But Dipper kind of gets paranoid a bit, and he thinks that Ford is controlled by Bill, so he attempts to use a memory gun on Ford. Although the memory ray blasts and goes in every direction, so Ford is safe. But he would have been anyway, because he got a metal plate in his head. So, but Ford is not mad at Dipper. He's proud of him, because if he was actually Bill, Dipper would have put up a good fight. And, this whole thing kind of felt out of place. Like, we had Mabel and the unicorn, and then Bill exposition. It kind of felt like two separate episodes that really don't mesh. Both are very good separately. What Mabel's doing with the unicorns, and Bill and Dipper and Ford learning about Bill. These are two great plot lines. They just don't feel like they should be in the same episode. Also, Stan was not in this episode hardly at all, other than to have a joke where he's helping smuggle pugs across the border, which is a callback to the last episode, the Stanchurian Candidate, where Shonda Ramirez, or whatever her name is, was listing off Stan's crimes, and one of them was pug smuggling. And if you are especially stupid, this is a play on drug smuggling, which I'm pretty sure, if this was not a Disney show, would have been what Stan's doing. Overall, this episode was pretty solid, other than the fact that the two plot lines kind of don't feel like they should mix. But I'm not going to hold it against them, Actually, I might, considering the next episode is Roadside Attraction, and those doesn't feel like it'd be there either, so I feel like maybe skip that episode and have those two separately. Mabel fighting some unicorns, maybe a two-parter. Have the Bill's exposition be this episode, and the Mass Mablecorn be the next one, or something like that. I don't know. Overall, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.